On a chilly autumn morning, the sun peeked through thin clouds, casting golden rays over a quiet neighborhood. The air carried the faint scent of fallen leaves and freshly brewed coffee wafting from nearby homes. In one small house on Maple Street, an elderly black man named Mr. Jameson stood in front of his mirror, adjusting his burgundy tie for what felt like the 100th time. His reflection showed a face marked by age, deep lines etched around his mouth and eyes. But his expression radiated pride and determination. Today was special. It wasn't just any ordinary day. It was his granddaughter Maya's birthday. Maya meant everything to Mr. Jameson. From the moment she came into his life as a giggling toddler with curly pigtails, she had been his source of joy and purpose. Now 16 years old, she was growing, up fast, full of dreams and boundless energy. Her laughter could light up even the darkest corners of his heart. Over the past few months, Mr. Jameson had saved every extra penny he could spare, determined to buy her something unforgettable, gift that would remind her how much she was loved. Jewelry seemed perfect. Something delicate yet timeless, something she could treasure forever. After breakfast, Mr. Jameson slipped on his charcoal gray suit, polished his shoes until they gleamed, and tucked a neatly folded handkerchief into his breast pocket. He took a deep breath, checked himself once more in the mirror, and stepped outside. The streets were alive with activity, children walking to school, neighbors chatting on porches, cars humming along the road. As he walked toward the downtown area, memories flooded his mind. He thought about all the birthdays he'd celebrated with Maya, the homemade cakes, the colorful balloons, the way her eyes sparkled when she unwrapped her presents. Each memory brought a smile to his lips, but also a pang of sadness. Time moved so quickly. Before he knew it, she'd be off to college, starting her own life. The boutique he planned to visit sat at the edge of the main street, its windows gleaming under the morning sunlight. It was an upscale store known for its exquisite jewelry collection, catering mostly to wealthy clients who drove expensive cars and wore designer clothes. Mr. Jameson had passed by it many times before, always admiring the display cases filled with glittering necklaces, rings, and bracelets. But today, he wasn't there to admire. He was there to buy. Clutching his wallet tightly in his coat pocket, he pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The interior of the boutique was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft, warm light over rows of glass cases, brimming with jewels. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and leather, adding to the luxurious atmosphere. A young saleswoman dressed in a crisp black blazer greeted him with a practiced smile as he entered. "Good morning. Can I help you?" she asked, her voice smooth and professional. For a brief moment, Mr. Jameson felt welcomed, almost important, but then her gaze flickered downward, taking in his worn shoes, his slightly frayed cuffs, and the weathered hands gripping the edge of his coat. Her smile faltered ever so slightly, replaced by a cooler, more distant expression. "Yes, thank you," Mr. Jameson replied politely, ignoring the shift in her demeanor. "I'm looking for a necklace for my granddaughter. She's turning 16 today." He pointed toward a display case near the center of the room, where a silver chain adorned with a tiny, heart-shaped pendant caught his eye. It was simple, yet elegant, exactly what he imagined Maya would love. The saleswoman followed his gesture but hesitated before moving closer. Instead, she glanced at another employee behind the counter, exchanging a look that spoke volumes without words. "That piece is quite expensive," the saleswoman said finally, her tone clipped and dismissive. "Are you sure it's within your budget?" The question stung, landing like a sharp jab to his chest. Mr. Jameson swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain calm. He knew this reaction well. It wasn't the first time someone had judged him based on appearances. Growing up in a world where opportunities often depended on skin color or socioeconomic status, he'd learned to navigate these moments with grace and resilience. Still, each encounter left a scar, no matter how invisible. "I'd like to see it, please," he said firmly, meeting her gaze with steady eyes. Reluctantly, the saleswoman unlocked the case and retrieved the necklace, handing it to him with exaggerated care. As Mr. Jameson held the delicate piece in his hands, he couldn't help but marvel at its beauty. The pendant shimmered softly in the light, catching every angle just right. This was it, the perfect gift for Maya. Yet, the tension in the room was palpable. Other customers were being attended to eagerly, their questions answered promptly and enthusiastically. Meanwhile, Mr. Jameson felt like an outsider, tolerated rather than welcomed. At one point, he overheard a manager whisper to the saleswoman, "Maybe we should direct him to the clearance section." Though spoken quietly, the words reached his ears clearly. Humiliation burned in his chest, but he refused to let it show. Instead, he focused on the necklace, imagining Maya's face lighting up when she opened the velvet box. That image gave him strength, reminding him why he was here. No amount of prejudice or disrespect could take away the joy he wanted to give his granddaughter. Finally, after several minutes of awkward silence and barely concealed impatience from the staff, Mr. Jameson decided it was time to make his purchase. He approached the register, setting the necklace down gently. The cashier handled the transaction slowly, counting out his bills with deliberate care, as though expecting him to make a mistake. When the sale was complete, Mr. Jameson thanked the staff with quiet dignity, slipping the small velvet box into his coat pocket. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of his reflection in the glass door. Despite the weight of the experience, his posture remained upright, his head held high. He reminded himself that true worth couldn't be measured by material possessions or superficial judgments. Stepping back onto the bustling street, Mr. Jameson took a deep breath, letting the cool air wash over him. The noise of the city, the chatter of pedestrians, the hum of traffic, felt comforting after the stifling atmosphere of the boutique. For a moment, he allowed himself to dwell on the injustice of it all. Why did people feel entitled to judge others based on fleeting impressions? Why did some places still cling to outdated notions of class and privilege? These questions swirled in his mind, stirring emotions he usually kept buried beneath layers of patience and understanding. But as he continued walking, his thoughts shifted. Memories of Maya's laughter and bright smile pushed aside the bitterness, filling him with renewed determination. He reminded himself that the necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of love, resilience, and hope. And nothing, not rude salespeople, not dismissive glances, not whispered comments, could diminish its value. With each step closer to Maya's house, Mr. Jameson felt lighter, his earlier frustrations melting away like frost under the morning sun. By the time he arrived, he was ready to focus on what truly mattered, celebrating the extraordinary young woman who had brought so much light into his life. When Mr. Jameson arrived at Maya's house, the cheerful chaos of a birthday celebration greeted him before he even stepped inside. Cars lined the driveway, balloons swayed gently in the breeze tied to the mailbox, and laughter spilled out from the open windows. The front door swung wide as he approached, revealing a scene alive with warmth and energy. Family members and friends mingled in the living room, their voices blending into a symphony of conversation and shared memories. Children darted between adults, giggling as they chased each other around the furniture, while plates of food covered every available surface in the dining area. Maya stood near the center of it all, her bright yellow sundress glowing like sunshine against the cozy backdrop of her home. She looked radiant, her dark curls bouncing as she turned to greet her grandfather with an eager wave. "Grandpa!" she called out, rushing toward him with arms wide open. Mr. Jameson felt his heart swell as she hugged him tightly, her enthusiasm infectious. For a moment, all the stress and frustration of the day melted away. This was why he endured everything: the judgmental stares, the dismissive comments, the subtle slights. To see the pure joy on Maya's face made it all worthwhile. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he said softly, pulling back to look at her. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes sparkling brighter than any gemstone. "You've grown so much since last year. I can hardly keep up." "Oh, stop it, Grandpa," Maya teased, playfully rolling her eyes. "You say that every year." "Well, it's true. he replied with a chuckle, ruffling her hair affectionately. Now where do I put this gift? It's something special just for you. Maya's eyes widened with anticipation. For me? Already? You didn't have to. Get me anything, Grandpa. I wanted to, he said simply, handing her the small velvet box wrapped neatly in silver paper. As she took it from him, he noticed how carefully she held it, turning it over in her hands as if trying to guess what lay inside. The curiosity on her face brought a smile to his lips. He loved watching her discover new things, whether it was a book, a hobby, or a surprise gift like this one. The party moved along smoothly, filled with games, music, and plenty of cake. Maya opened presents one by one, thanking everyone graciously for their thoughtful gifts. Toys, clothes, and gadgets piled up beside her, each item met with delighted squeals or appreciative nods. But when she reached the velvet box from her grandfather, there was a noticeable pause. She set aside the wrapping paper slowly, almost reverently, and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled against soft fabric, lay the delicate silver necklace adorned with a tiny heart-shaped pendant. The room seemed to grow quieter as she stared at it, her breath catching audibly. Grandpa, she whispered, lifting the necklace out of the box. The pendant caught the light, shimmering softly as she held it up to examine it more closely. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, though her smile remained wide and genuine. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, I love it. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him again, holding him so tightly that he could feel her heartbeat through her dress. In that moment, all the challenges of the day faded completely. None of the salespeople's dismissive glances mattered now. None of the whispered judgments held any weight. What mattered was the look of pure happiness on Maya's face, the way her voice trembled with gratitude as she thanked him. That alone was worth every struggle. As the evening wore on, the celebration shifted outdoors to the backyard, where string lights twinkled above picnic tables laden with desserts and drinks. Music played softly in the background, mingling with the sound of crickets chirping in the cool night air. Maya proudly wore the necklace, its tiny pendant resting perfectly against her collarbone. Every time someone complimented it, she beamed and pointed to her grandfather, saying, "Isn't it amazing? My grandpa picked it out himself." Watching her interact with guests, Mr. Jameson couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Maya wasn't just smart and kind. She carried herself with grace and confidence, qualities he admired deeply. She reminded him of her grandmother, his late wife, who had possessed the same quiet strength and ability to bring people together. Thinking of her brought both comfort and sorrow, but tonight, surrounded by family and laughter, the sadness felt lighter somehow. After most of the guests had left and the cleanup began, Maya joined her grandfather on the porch, settling into a chair beside him. They sat quietly for a while, sipping lemonade and listening to the distant hum of traffic. The sky above them was painted in shades of indigo and violet, stars beginning to twinkle faintly in the vast expanse. Though the day had been long, neither of them seemed ready to retreat indoors just yet. "Grandpa," Maya said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence, "is everything okay? You seem different today." Her question caught him off guard, but not because it was unexpected. He'd always tried to shield her from the harsh realities of the world, wanting to preserve her innocence for as long as possible. Yet in that moment he realized that perhaps it was time to share a piece of his truth, not to burden her but to prepare her. Life wouldn't always be fair, and she deserved to know how to navigate its complexities with courage and integrity. Mr. Jameson hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Today was challenging," he admitted finally, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "When I went to buy your necklace, some people weren't very kind. They judged me based on how I looked instead of seeing who I really am." Maya frowned, confusion knitting her brows together. "What do you mean? Why would anyone treat you badly?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Sometimes people make assumptions about others without knowing anything about them. They see my clothes or the color of my skin and decide I don't belong in certain places. Today, those assumptions followed me into the store." For a moment, Maya was silent, processing his words. Then, with the fiery determination only a teenager could muster, she declared, "That's not fair. You shouldn't let anyone treat you like that, Grandpa. And neither will I." Her response brought a chuckle to his lips, easing the weight he'd carried throughout the day. "I'm glad to hear that, sweetheart. Just remember, standing up for yourself doesn't mean being angry or bitter. It means showing kindness even when others don't deserve it. It means proving them wrong by being the best version of yourself." Maya nodded thoughtfully, her expression softening. "I'll never forget what you did for me today, Grandpa. Not just the necklace, but how brave you were. I want to be like you when I grow up." Her words touched him deeply, filling him with a mix of pride and humility. He reached over to pat her hand gently. "You already are like me, Maya. Strong, kind, and full of love. That's all anyone needs to change the world." They sat together for a while longer, watching the stars emerge one by one. The night grew, cooler, but neither of them minded. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the beauty of the universe and the bond they shared, they found solace. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly hold challenges, they faced it together, with hope, resilience, and an unshakable belief in the power of love to overcome adversity. For Mr. Jameson, the day had started with uncertainty and ended with clarity. Despite the obstacles he'd encountered, he'd succeeded in giving Maya not just a gift, but a lesson in perseverance and dignity. And for Maya, the experience planted a seed, a growing awareness of the world's imperfections and her role in shaping a better future. Together, they proved that even in the face of prejudice and hardship, love and understanding could shine brightest of all. The days following Maya's birthday passed quickly, but the impact of that evening lingered in both their minds. For Mr. Jameson, the conversation on the porch with his granddaughter had stirred something deep within him, a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that while he had endured prejudice for much of his life, it was no longer enough to simply accept it and move on. The world was changing, albeit slowly, and he wanted to be part of that change, not just for himself but for Maya and others like her who deserved a fairer, kinder society. One morning, as he sipped his coffee at the kitchen table, Mr. Jameson picked up the local newspaper lying beside him. A small article caught his eye. A community meeting scheduled for the upcoming weekend about promoting equality and inclusion in local businesses. It mentioned recent concerns raised by residents regarding discriminatory practices in stores, restaurants, and other public spaces. Reading those words, Mr. Jameson felt a spark ignite inside him. This was an opportunity to speak out, to share his story, and perhaps inspire others to do the same. That weekend, he attended the meeting held at the town hall. The room buzzed with energy as people from all walks of life gathered: parents, teachers, business owners, and activists. Some faces were familiar, others were new. Chairs filled rapidly, forcing latecomers to stand along the walls or sit cross-legged on the floor. At the front of the room stood a podium where speakers took turns addressing the crowd. Their voices carried passion and conviction, recounting personal experiences of bias and advocating for systemic change. When it was his turn to speak, Mr. Jameson rose from his seat, his heart pounding. Public speaking wasn't something he enjoyed, but tonight he knew he had to step forward. Walking to the podium, he adjusted the microphone to suit his height and cleared his throat. The room fell silent, every pair of eyes focused on him. Taking a deep breath, he began. "I'm here today because I believe we can build a better community," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. "A few weeks ago, I went into a boutique downtown to buy a gift for my granddaughter. What should have been a simple, joyful experience turned into something else entirely." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I was treated differently, not because of who I am, but because of assumptions made about me based on how I look." As he recounted the details of his visit, the dismissive glances, the whispered comments, the reluctance of the staff to assist him, he saw nods of understanding ripple through the audience. People leaned forward in their seats, listening intently. When he described the necklace he'd bought for Maya and the pride he felt giving it to her despite the challenges, a few attendees wiped tears from their eyes, His story resonated deeply, reminding everyone present of the power of resilience and love. By the end of his speech, applause erupted throughout the room. Several people approached him afterward, shaking his hand and thanking him for sharing his experience. One woman, a local teacher named Lisa, introduced herself and expressed admiration for his courage. "Your story is so important," she said earnestly. "We need more voices like yours to remind us why this work matters." Encouraged by the response, Mr. Jameson decided to stay involved. Over the next few months, he became a regular participant in community discussions, workshops, and initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity. He joined a committee tasked with developing training programs for employees in retail and service industries, focusing on recognizing unconscious biases and treating customers with dignity regardless of appearance or background. Though the work was challenging, it gave him a profound sense of fulfillment. Each meeting, each conversation brought him closer to the vision of a world where no one would feel diminished simply for walking into a store. Meanwhile, Maya also found herself inspired by her grandfather's actions. Back at school, she noticed subtle forms of discrimination among her peers, comments dismissed because they came from certain students, opportunities overlooked due to stereotypes. Remembering her grandfather's advice about standing up for oneself with kindness and integrity, she decided to take action. She joined a club called Unity in Diversity, which focused on celebrating differences and combating prejudice within the student body. At first, Maya wasn't sure how to contribute. Many of the members were older students with years of activism under their belts, and she worried her ideas wouldn't measure up. But during one meeting, when the group brainstormed ways to address microaggressions in classrooms, she spoke up. "What if we created a buddy system?" she suggested hesitantly. Older students could mentor younger ones, helping them navigate tough situations and teaching them how to respond respectfully. Her proposal sparked lively discussion, and soon the idea gained traction. With guidance from the club's advisors, Maya helped launch the program, pairing volunteers with freshmen and sophomores who needed support. Watching her classmates grow more confident and united brought her immense satisfaction. She often thought of her grandfather during these moments, imagining how proud he must be. Back home, Mr. Jameson and Maya continued their nightly talks on the porch, sharing updates on their respective efforts. They exchanged stories of triumphs and setbacks, offering encouragement and advice whenever needed. These conversations strengthened their bond, transforming them into not just family, but partners in advocacy. Together, they learned that making a difference required patience, persistence, and faith in the possibility of progress, even when results weren't immediately visible. One evening, as autumn gave way to winter, Mr. Jameson received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was addressed to him personally, bearing the logo of the boutique where he'd purchased Maya's necklace. Curious, he opened it and read the contents aloud to Maya, who sat beside him wrapped in a blanket. "Dear Mr. Jameson," the letter began. "We recently became aware of your experience at our store earlier this year. Please accept our sincerest apologies for any discomfort or disrespect you may have encountered. We are committed to ensuring that all customers feel valued and respected, and we regret falling short of that standard." The letter went on to explain that the management had implemented new employee training programs focused on inclusivity and customer service. Additionally, they invited Mr. Jameson to visit the store again, promising a warmer welcome and expressing gratitude for bringing attention to areas needing improvement. Maya looked at her grandfather, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Wow, Grandpa, that's amazing. Did you expect this?" He shook his head, a mixture of surprise and satisfaction crossing his face. "No, sweetheart, I didn't. But it shows that speaking up can make a difference, even in places where change seems impossible." Though the apology couldn't erase the past, it served as a powerful reminder that progress was possible. For Mr. Jameson, it validated his decision to share his story openly, knowing it might inspire others to confront injustice rather than remain silent. And for Maya, it reinforced the lesson her grandfather had taught her, that even in the face of adversity, compassion and courage could pave the way for meaningful transformation. As snowflakes began to drift lazily from the sky, blanketing the world in white, Mr. Jameson and Maya sat quietly together, reflecting on everything they'd accomplished. The road ahead still stretched long and uncertain, but they faced it with hope and determination. Through their actions, they proved that love, resilience, and unity could light the darkest paths, guiding others toward a brighter future. The weeks following the boutique's apology letter brought a renewed sense of purpose to Mr. Jameson's life. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that his decision to speak out had sparked tangible change. The boutique wasn't just issuing empty words, they were taking concrete steps to improve their practices, which gave him hope that other businesses might follow suit. Still, he knew this was only the beginning. True progress required consistent effort, and he was determined to keep pushing forward, not just for himself but for everyone who deserved to be treated with dignity. One chilly Saturday morning, as frost clung to the grass outside his home, Mr. Jameson bundled up in his coat and scarf and headed downtown. The community group he'd joined had organized a workshop at the local library, aimed at educating business owners about unconscious bias and inclusive customer service. Though he wasn't an expert on the subject, he volunteered to share his personal story during the session. His experience at the boutique had resonated deeply with many people, and organizers believed it could inspire others to reflect on their own behaviors and assumptions. When he arrived at the library, he found the meeting room already filled with attendees. Business owners sat alongside employees, students, and curious residents, all eager to learn how they could contribute to creating a more welcoming environment. A young woman named Sarah, one of the event coordinators, greeted him warmly. "Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Jameson," she said, shaking his hand. "Your perspective is exactly what we need today." As the workshop began, speakers took turns presenting research, statistics, and strategies for fostering inclusivity. Then, it was Mr. Jameson's turn. Standing at the front of the room, he felt a familiar flutter of nerves but reminded himself why he was there: to help others see the human side of discrimination. Taking a deep breath, he began recounting his visit to the boutique, describing every detail, the dismissive glances, the whispered comments, and the way it made him feel like an outsider in a place meant to serve everyone equally. "I didn't go into that store expecting special treatment," he explained, his voice steady despite the weight of the memory. "All I wanted was to buy a gift for my granddaughter, a simple act of love. But instead of being welcomed, I was judged before anyone even spoke to me. And while I walked away with the necklace I came for, I also left carrying something heavier, the reminder that prejudice still exists, even in places we least expect it." His words hung in the air, heavy yet powerful. The room fell silent, every listener absorbed in his story. Some nodded in understanding, while others scribbled notes furiously, as if trying to capture the essence of his message. When he finished speaking, applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and appreciation. Several attendees approached him afterward, thanking him for sharing his experience and vowing to make changes in their own workplaces. Among those who approached him was a middle-aged man named Greg, the owner of a popular cafe in town. "Mr. Jameson, your story really hit home for me," Greg admitted, his expression earnest. "I realize that some of my staff might unintentionally treat customers differently based on appearances. I want to ensure my cafe is a place where everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are or where they come from." Moved by Greg's sincerity, Mr. Jameson offered advice. "Start by listening," he said. "Ask your customers and employees how they feel when they walk through your doors. Sometimes small actions like smiling genuinely or making eye contact can make a big difference. It's about seeing people as individuals, not stereotypes." Greg nodded thoughtfully, promising to implement training sessions for his team. Watching him leave, Mr. Jameson felt a surge of pride. Change often began with honest conversations, and he was grateful to play a role in starting them. Meanwhile, Maya continued her work with the Unity and Diversity Club at school, expanding its reach beyond the buddy system she'd helped create. Inspired by her grandfather's advocacy, she proposed organizing a community event called Voices United, where students and adults could share stories of overcoming prejudice and celebrating differences. Her idea quickly gained support from teachers and parents alike, and planning for the event became a collaborative effort. On the day of Voices United, the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Families, friends, and neighbors packed the rows of seats, eager to hear the diverse range of voices set to take the stage. Maya stood backstage, peeking through the curtain as her heart raced with anticipation. For weeks, she and her fellow club members had worked tirelessly to prepare speeches, performances, and presentations that highlighted the beauty of diversity and the importance of standing together against injustice. When the lights dimmed and the program began, Maya introduced the event with a heartfelt speech. "Today, we're here to celebrate our differences and recognize the strength they bring to our community," she announced, her voice clear and confident. "But we're also here to acknowledge the challenges many of us face because of those differences, and to commit ourselves to building a world where everyone belongs." As speaker after speaker took the stage, the audience listened intently, moved by each story. One student recounted being teased for her accent when she first immigrated to the country, while another shared how he overcame bullying because of his disability. Adults spoke too, including Mr. Jameson, who delivered a shorter version of his boutique story tailored for younger ears. Each narrative added another layer to the tapestry of experiences, reminding everyone present that no one was alone in their struggles. By the end of the evening, the auditorium erupted in applause, cheers echoing off the walls. People lingered, long after the program concluded, exchanging hugs, phone numbers, and promises to stay connected. Maya watched from the sidelines, overwhelmed by the turnout and the impact it seemed to have on everyone involved. She spotted her grandfather near the refreshment table, chatting animatedly with a group of parents and teachers. Catching his eye, she grinned and waved, feeling an immense sense of accomplishment wash over her. That night, as they drove home, together, Maya turned to her grandfather, her eyes shining with emotion. "Grandpa, did you ever think something like this could happen? That our little efforts could bring so many people together?" Mr. Jameson smiled, reaching over to pat her hand gently. "To be honest, sweetheart, I hoped it would, but I never imagined it would feel this rewarding. Seeing people come together, listen to each other, and commit to making things better, it reminds me why we started this journey in the first place." Maya nodded, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "It makes me believe that maybe we can actually change things, not just here but everywhere. If enough people care and take action, anything's possible." Her optimism filled him with hope. He knew the road to equality and justice was long and fraught with obstacles, but moments like these proved that progress was achievable. One conversation, one story, one act of kindness at a time. Back at home, they settled onto the porch once more, wrapped in blankets against the cold night air. Stars glittered overhead, their light piercing through the darkness. As they sat in companionable silence, both reflected on how far they'd come since that autumn morning when Mr. Jameson first set out to buy Maya's necklace. What had started as a simple gesture of love had grown into something much larger, a movement fueled by resilience, compassion, and the unshakable belief that change was possible. For Mr. Jameson, the journey reinforced the importance of using his voice and experiences to uplift others. For Maya, it instilled a lifelong commitment to fighting for fairness and inclusion. Together, they embodied the power of intergenerational activism, proving that love and determination could bridge gaps and inspire communities to strive for a brighter, more equitable future. The months that followed the Voices United event brought a wave of momentum to Mr. Jameson and Maya's efforts. The community, once hesitant to confront issues of bias and inequality, now seemed eager to embrace change. Conversations about inclusivity were no longer confined to town hall meetings or school auditoriums. They spilled into coffee shops, grocery stores, and even casual chats among neighbors. People began noticing subtle shifts in behavior. Smiles, exchanged more freely, doors held open without hesitation, and greetings offered with genuine warmth. It was as though the collective spirit of the town had awakened, inspired by the courage of those who dared to speak up. For Mr. Jameson, this newfound energy was both exhilarating and humbling. He found himself invited to speak at schools, businesses, and local organizations, sharing his story and encouraging others to reflect on their own roles in fostering a fairer society. Each invitation came with its own unique audience, from wide-eyed elementary students to seasoned professionals seeking practical ways to implement change. Though public speaking still made him nervous, he reminded himself that his words carried weight, not because of who he was, but because of the universal truths they represented. One particularly memorable invitation came from a nearby high school, where a group of seniors had organized a panel discussion titled "Breaking Barriers." The students wanted to hear firsthand accounts of overcoming adversity and learn how to apply those lessons in their own lives. When Mr. Jameson arrived at the school auditorium on the day of the event, he was greeted by a sea of curious faces. Some students leaned forward eagerly, notebooks in hand, while others sat back with arms crossed, skeptical but intrigued. As the moderator introduced him, Mr. Jameson took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice calm yet firm. "When I was asked to speak here today, I thought about what message might resonate most with young people like yourselves. And then it hit me. You're already doing something remarkable just by being here. By listening, by asking questions, you're taking the first step toward understanding." He went on to recount his experience at the boutique and the ripple effect it had created. But rather than dwelling solely on the negative aspects, he emphasized the power of resilience. "Life will throw challenges your way, some big, some small," he said. "But how you respond matters more than anything else. You can choose to let setbacks define you, or you can use them as fuel to push for something better. That choice is yours." His words struck a chord with the students. During the Q&A session that followed, hands shot up across the room. One student asked how to handle situations where speaking up felt risky. Another wondered whether individual actions could truly make a difference. Mr. Jameson answered each question thoughtfully, drawing from his own experiences and offering practical advice. "You won't always get it right," he admitted. "And sometimes standing up for what's right means facing resistance. But remember, change doesn't happen overnight. Every kind word, every act of fairness adds up, even if you don't see immediate results. Trust that your efforts are planting seeds. Over time, those seeds grow into something beautiful." After the event, several students lingered behind to thank him personally. One girl, her eyes brimming with emotion, told him she'd been struggling with self-doubt after being teased for wearing traditional clothing to school. "Your story gave me hope," she said softly. "I realized I'm not alone, and that gives me strength." Moments like these reaffirmed Mr. Jameson's belief in the importance of storytelling. Sharing his journey wasn't just about processing his own pain. It was about connecting with others, reminding them that they weren't alone either. And as he watched these young people carry his message forward, he couldn't help but feel optimistic about the future. Meanwhile, Maya continued to channel her passion for advocacy into creative projects. Inspired by the success of Voices United, she decided to launch a podcast called Different Yet the Same, where she interviewed people from diverse backgrounds about their experiences navigating prejudice and finding common ground. With Yao, her grandfather's guidance, she learned how to structure episodes, conduct interviews, and edit audio files. What started as a modest hobby quickly gained traction online, attracting listeners from all over the country. Each episode highlighted a different perspective. A Latina entrepreneur discussing the challenges of starting a business in a predominantly white industry. A Muslim teenager sharing how she navigated stereotypes after moving to a new town. A disabled artist explaining how societal barriers often overshadowed her talents. Through these stories, Maya hoped to dismantle misconceptions and foster empathy among her audience. One evening, as she recorded an episode featuring her grandfather, she asked him a question she'd been meaning to pose for a long time. "Grandpa, how do you stay hopeful when things feel so unfair sometimes?" Mr. Jameson paused, considering his answer carefully. "Hope isn't something that comes easily, sweetheart," he replied. "It's built through action. Every time I see someone stand up for what's right, even in small ways, I find hope." Every time I hear a story like yours or meet someone committed to making a difference, I believe we're moving closer to a world where everyone is treated with dignity. Maya nodded, absorbing his words. That makes sense. I guess it's like building a bridge, one plank at a time. Exactly, he agreed with a smile. And bridges connect us. They remind us that no matter how different we may seem, we're all walking the same path. The podcast became a platform not only for education but also for healing. Listeners flooded the comments section with messages of gratitude, sharing how the stories resonated with their own struggles and inspired them to take action. Teachers incorporated episodes into their lesson plans, parents played them during family dinners, and activists referenced them in workshops. For Maya, seeing her project touch so many lives reinforced her belief in the power of storytelling to drive change. Back at home, Mr. Jameson and Maya celebrated their growing impact together. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch, sipping hot cocoa and reflecting on their journey. They talked about the challenges they'd faced, the skepticism they encountered, the moments of doubt that tested their resolve, but also the victories, both large and small. Each milestone reminded them that progress was possible, even in a world that often resisted it. One chilly spring night, as they gazed at the stars twinkling above, Maya turned to her grandfather with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what Grandma would think of all this?" she asked softly. Mr. Jameson smiled, his eyes misting slightly at the mention of his late wife. "She'd be proud," he said after a moment. "Proud of you, proud of me, proud of everyone working to make the world a little brighter. She always believed in the goodness of people even when it was hard to see." Maya reached over to squeeze his hand. "I think she'd love hearing our stories too. Maybe she's listening right now." They sat in silence for a while, letting the idea settle between them. Though neither could know for sure, they chose to believe that their efforts reached beyond the present moment, that somehow their work honored the memory of those who came before and paved the way for those who would follow. As spring gave way to summer, the community continued to evolve. Local businesses posted signs pledging inclusivity, schools implemented diversity training programs, and neighborhoods hosted cultural festivals celebrating the rich tapestry of traditions within their midst. While challenges remained, there was a palpable shift in attitudes, a growing recognition that equality wasn't just an ideal but a responsibility shared by all. For Mr. Jameson and Maya, the journey was far from over. There would always be more work to do, more voices to amplify, and more bridges to build. But as they looked around at the changes taking root, they knew they were making a difference. Together, they proved that love, resilience, and determination could light even the darkest paths, guiding others toward a brighter, more inclusive future. As summer unfolded, the town seemed to breathe with a new rhythm, a sense of unity and purpose that had been missing for so long. The efforts of Mr. Jameson, Maya, and countless others were bearing fruit in ways both visible and subtle. The boutique where Mr. Jameson had purchased the necklace now displayed a sign near its entrance. "All are welcome here." Inside, employees greeted customers warmly, regardless of their appearance or background. It was a small, but powerful, gesture, one that symbolized how far the business and the community had come. For Mr. Jameson, seeing this transformation firsthand filled him with quiet pride. He often visited the store not because he needed anything, but because it reminded him of the journey they'd all taken together. On one such visit, he struck up a conversation with a young saleswoman who recognized him from the training sessions he'd helped organize. "Mr. Jameson, right?" she asked with a bright smile. "Thank you for everything you've done. Your story really opened our eyes." He chuckled modestly, waving off her gratitude. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "Change happens when people work together. You're part of that too." Her words stayed with him as he left the store, carrying a renewed appreciation for the power of collective effort. No single person could dismantle prejudice alone, but every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, added up to something greater than the sum of its parts. Meanwhile, Maya's podcast, different, yet the EAO, Same continued to grow, reaching audiences far beyond their small town. One episode featuring an interview with Greg, the cafe owner inspired by Mr. Jameson's workshop, went viral after being shared widely on social media. In the episode, Greg spoke candidly about his initial reluctance to address bias within his staff and how hearing Mr. Jameson's story pushed him to take action. Sometimes we don't realize the impact of our actions until someone points it out, Greg admitted during the recording. But once you do, there's no going back. The response to the episode was overwhelming. Listeners praised Greg's honesty and encouraged other business owners to follow his lead. Some even reached out to offer support, sharing resources and ideas for fostering inclusivity in their own workplaces. Inspired by the feedback, Maya decided to host a live event called Building Bridges, where listeners could meet in person to discuss the themes explored in the podcast. She envisioned it as a chance for connection, collaboration, and celebration, a tangible extension of the digital community she'd built. When the day of the event arrived, a local park buzzed with activity. Families spread blankets across the grass, children played games under colorful tents, and volunteers handed out flyers promoting upcoming workshops and initiatives. At the center of it all stood a stage where speakers, including Mr. Jameson, Maya, Greg, and several podcast guests, took turns addressing the crowd. Maya stepped up to the microphone first, her voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "Welcome to Building Bridges," she began, scanning the sea of faces before her. "Today is about celebrating what makes us unique while recognizing what brings us together. It's about listening, learning, and taking steps, big or small, toward a world where everyone feels valued." Her words set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. Each speaker shared personal stories of overcoming adversity, emphasizing the importance of empathy and action. When it was Mr. Jameson's turn, he spoke not only about his experience at the boutique, but also about the lessons he'd learned along the way. "Progress isn't always easy," he said, his voice carrying across the park, "but it's worth it. Every time we choose kindness over judgment, understanding over assumption, we move closer to a better future, for ourselves and for generations to come." The audience erupted in applause, their cheers mingling with the sounds of laughter and music filling the air. After the speeches, attendees gathered in smaller groups to continue the conversation sparked on stage. Strangers introduced themselves, exchanging contact information and promising to stay connected. Volunteers distributed packets containing tips for fostering inclusivity at home, school, and work, ensuring that the momentum generated by the event would carry forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park, Maya found herself standing beside her grandfather, watching the scene unfold. "Do you think this will last?" she asked softly, her gaze sweeping over the smiling faces around them. "I think it has to," Mr. Jameson replied, his expression thoughtful. "Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. We've planted seeds today, seeds of hope, resilience, and love. Whether they grow depends on all of us." Maya nodded, feeling a deep sense of responsibility settle over her. She realized then that advocacy wasn't a destination, but a lifelong commitment. There would always be challenges to face, injustices to confront, and bridges to build. But as long as people like her grandfather and now herself continued to stand up, speak out, and lead by example, change was possible. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of the event became evident. Local schools incorporated discussions about inclusivity into their curricula, inspired by the materials distributed at the park. Businesses implemented new policies designed to create welcoming environments for employees and customers alike. And families began having honest conversations about privilege, bias, and the importance of treating others with respect. For Mr. Jameson, these developments reinforced his belief in the interconnectedness of humanity. Though he was nearing the later years of his life, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment knowing that his legacy would endure through the actions of those he'd touched. Whether it was a student who decided to challenge stereotypes in their classroom, a business owner who reevaluated their hiring practices, or a child who learned to see beyond differences, his influence lived on. One evening, as he and Maya sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight, he turned to her with a gentle smile. "You know, sweetheart, I used to worry about leaving behind a mark, not just for myself, but for your grandmother and everyone else who believed in fairness and equality. But now, looking at everything you've accomplished, I realize I don't have to worry anymore." Maya blinked back tears, her heart swelling with emotion. "You've already left a mark, Grandpa. A big one. And I promise I'll keep building on it." They sat in silence for a while, letting the cool night air wrap around them like a comforting embrace. Above them, stars twinkled brightly against the darkening sky, each one a reminder of the countless lives touched by their efforts. Together, they had proven that love and determination could light even the darkest paths, guiding others toward a brighter, more inclusive future. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly hold challenges, they faced it with unwavering hope and resolve. For Mr. Jameson and Maya, the journey wasn't just about fighting injustice, it was about building connections, fostering understanding, and creating a world where everyone belonged. And in doing so, they reminded everyone around them that, no matter how different their stories might be, they were all walking the same path, hand in hand, toward a better tomorrow.